quiz, and this is just for fun. So, the word Seder means meal. More work for the culinary department. If you know the answer because you're a Jewish shill, don't answer.
Okay.
Order or horseradish? What does the word Seder mean? The answer is C, order. Yep, okay. During the Passover meal, the book that is used to tell the story of the Exodus is called the Torah, Gideon's Bible, the Haggadah, or the Book of Esther. Say again? The Haggadah, which actually means a telling or a story. Number 3, the holiday of Passover is observed for 4 days, for 12 days, forever, for 8 days.
Forever.
8 days, it feels like forever, right? During Passover, many Jewish people do not consume peas, rice, whole wheat bread, peanut butter, or beer. It's a trick question. All of the above. Michael, come up here.
Really?
Okay. At the Seacrest village communities, Passover, Kashrut, is observed. So Kashrut is the word for dietary laws. You've heard the word kosher, right? Something is kosher, but the whole category of dietary laws is called kashrut. So here it is observed for the first and last days of the holiday, the odd numbered days of the holiday, all 8 days of the holiday, or each resident makes their own decision.
All 8 days.
All 8 days. The holiday of Passover celebrates the spring harvest, miracle of oil in the ancient temple, redemption of the Israelites from slavery in Egypt, or the building of Noah's Ark. Redemption of the Israelites from slavery. And finally, during Passover, Seacrest employees may bring in any kind of food they like, will have designated areas where they may eat, will be able to buy food from the vending machines, will have several meals provided to them by the generosity of our HR department, or all of the above. All of the above. Okay, so we're going to put that 100%. Awesome!
You guys are so great.
Fantastic. Okay, take a look at your brightly colored handout with this little Seder plate. So this front page is something I just put together called Passover by the Numbers that indicates some of the numeric things that we talk about during the Seder, during the Passover meal. It is kind of when we say Seder, most people aren't saying Seder because they're saying order, O-R-D-E-R. They are referring to the Passover meal as the Passover Seder. But the word itself means order. Why? Because everything is done in order. The 4 cups of wine are done at a certain time in the service. The matzah is done at a certain time. Dipping of parsley is done at a certain time. Okay? So, and then the 4 cups of wine, what they stand for, the 10 plagues, the 4 children, and 4 questions. So you can see there's kind of this theme with numbers. All right. Turn to the page that says Passover in Service 2019, 5779. By the way, that's the Hebrew year. It is 5,779 years since those who believe in the story of creation say the earth was created. The world was created by God. Now, you have to determine for yourself whether you believe that or whether you believe the earth is a lot older than 5,779 years old. That's not for me to tell you. That's for you to determine on your own. This in-service is going to address 3 primary topics. Number 1, what is Passover and what is a Seder? Number 2, what is kosher for Passover and how does it affect us here at Seacrest Village Retirement Communities? And when I say us, I mean not just us as employees, but us residents as well. And 3, ideas for working with our residents during the Passover holidays. Because no matter what your role is, whether you're involved in life enrichment, in administration, in accounting, in culinary, in any other department, you all interact at some level with residents, right? And whether you're seeing them in a hallway or in a dining room or in a room, there are things we can do at this time of year. So what is Passover and what is a Seder? Passover is the Jewish festival of freedom. It celebrates the deliverance of the Jewish people from slavery in Egypt. We were slaves for how many years? 400. 400 years. 40 is the number of years it took Moses to ask directions so we could find our way to the promised land. That's a joke. Okay. 40 years in the desert, 400 years in slavery. Have any of you ever attended a Seder, a Passover Seder? Yes. Okay, tell me one thing you remember from it.
There wasn't a lot of order. Everything was done at a certain time,
Okay.
in a certain way.
Okay.
That was the first thing that stuck out when I attended my first.
Okay. Angie, what do you remember?
Well, the Seders I went to was at my church, and so I remember how they had talked about, it was done by a Jewish man, and he talked about how it tied into the New Testament. So that's what I remember.
So how did it tie in?
Well, it tied, I'd rather not say
Okay.
it here.
Okay. All right. If
But-
part of what you learned was that the Last Supper was a Seder,
No.
okay, good,
No.
because that would have been wrong.
No,
The
it
Last
doesn't have
Supper that
anything to do
Jesus
with
had
that.
with his apostles was a Passover meal, but it was not a Seder. Because the Seder itself was not developed until about the year 300, long after Jesus had lived and died. And it was modeled after the Roman orgy meals, believe it or not. And I'll talk about some of the similarities and differences. Okay. Anybody else been to a Seder and have a recollection of something that happened? Yes.
Oh, the kids ask questions.
The kids ask questions. The Seder is really designed for children because the Torah says, you shall tell your children on that day what God did for us by taking us out of Egypt. So you tell stories, you sing songs, everything is geared towards the young people so that they ask questions about what's going on. Because how do kids learn? They ask a lot of questions. So order, so connections to New Testament, to kids asking questions, all of these are great answers. Anything about food that you remember?
The matzah crackers are in
Matzah, yes.
covered.
We don't have a piece of matzah here, but I'll show you the covers, okay? All right, so the centerpiece of the Passover, which is the word Pesach in Hebrew, is the Seder. It's an at-home service which retells the story of the Israelites in bondage in Egypt, the 10 plagues visited upon Pharaoh and the Egyptians, and the ultimate flight to freedom across the Sea of Reeds, which you may have heard called the Red Sea, but it's actually the Sea of Reeds in the Hebrew. So, by the way, these are yours to keep. So if you want to write notes or doodle or whatever you want to do, color, it's entirely up to you. Passover is the most widely celebrated Jewish festival. Not Hanukkah, not Rosh Hashanah, not Sukkot, Pesach, Passover. And even Jewish families who consider themselves to be secular, in other words, they don't do anything else all year long, very often they will observe this holiday, even if it's just with a festive meal, even if it's not with doing all the reading and everything else. There's a special book known as a Haggadah, which is used to guide the Seder service and meal. So, on my show and tell table here, I have about 15 different Haggadot, which is the plural for the word Haggadah. Everything from this gorgeous Moses Haggadah, beautifully illustrated, to this animated one that has, for kids, little claymation figures. Aren't they cute? Okay? And we read these. And then some more serious, I have a women's Haggadah here. I have a Haggadah that was written for LGBT community. So lots of different Haggadah. You can all think of festivals of freedom, right? When certain peoples were allowed to go free. This is the Passover Haggadah called the Bird's Head Haggadah. The original is actually in the Israel Museum in Jerusalem. It's gorgeous. It's beautifully illustrated. I walked into a is it Barnes & Noble that's still in business? What's the one that's out of business? Borders. I walked into a Borders a number of years ago, and I go to the dollar shelf, and here is this Haggadah. They had no idea what it was. So what this is it is a facsimile of the one that's in the Israel Museum, but it's a pop-up Haggadah, which is really cool. I mean, and it's called the bird head Haggadah because all the figures have these bird heads. So here's this guy putting matzah in the oven, making matzah. Isn't that cute? Here they are mixing the horseradish. Now the one in the Israel Museum, which is several hundreds of years old, doesn't have little pull tabs. Here's a taskmaster beating an Israelite slave. Yeah, I know. Isn't that awesome? And then my favorite one, I left in my office. I can't believe it. You'll have to come back for the next in-service. Passover is all about show and tell. We relay the story. We tell the story. We are supposed to feel as if we're not talking about ancient ancestors, but we ourselves came out of Egypt. And by the way, the Hebrew word for Egypt is Mitzrayim, and it means a narrow space, a narrow place. So I think everybody in this room probably has a time in their life where they felt like they were in a narrow place in their lives, kind of metaphorically, right? And you came out into freedom from that place. So the whole idea of coming into space, freedom is very important. So how do we do the show and tell? We tell the story, we play act, we read the Haggadah and behave as if it is us that was there. The Seder is this wonderful exercise in show and tell. Everything used during the service is a symbol and part of the story of the Exodus. Francis.
Can I sit in?
Yeah, it's for employees, but if you want to sit in, sit in.
Why not?
Why not? The meal served at the Seder is very festive and includes special items and family recipes. Okay, so this is a Seder plate. You can see that it has indentations on it. And in those indentations go different types of ritual foods. So every Seder plate is going to look completely different because they're created by artists. This one's from Israel. This one is also from Israel, but it's from the Armenian quarter, and they specialize in these beautiful hand-painted ceramics. And I didn't bring the little bowls, but there's a separate little bowl for each. It's very Spanish looking. It looks Moroccan, Algerian, right? It looks Middle Eastern / well, there is a whole segment of the Jewish population that have their roots in Spain, Mexico, Iran, Iraq, Algeria, Morocco, and so on, okay? We drink 4 cups of wine during the Seder. So the cups are very festive. This one, we drink from a cup called an Elijah's cup. Elijah the prophet is the prophet that is supposed to herald the coming of the Messiah, right? This is a Miriam's cup. Miriam, Moses' sister, was the one who led the Israelites across the Sea of Reeds and singing with her timbrel in her hand. We put water in here because everywhere in the land, in the Sinai Desert, where the Jews traveled, wells of water sprung up wherever Miriam was. So we celebrate her as well. Okay. This is a plate for matzah, also done in the Armenian hand-painted tile style. And this is a little Seder plate that my son made when he was a little boy that you color on and then put it in the oven and bake it in. Yes, he's now 38. If he knew I was doing this, he'd be turning bright red with embarrassment. Okay. Then, during the Seder, we hide a piece of matzah, and everybody has to look for it. You can't finish the meal until that piece of matzah is found. So this is a special bag for that piece of matzah. This is from Israel, hand-painted silk. As you can see, it's got a little wrap it up and hide it, and the kids all look for it, or the kids make the adults look for it. This is a special matzah bag in which 3 pieces of matzah go. And each piece represents something different. So you can see there's compartments in here. And all of these things are used throughout the course of the Seder as part of the telling of the story. Okay, so if you want to keep kids entertained, the best thing to do is to have creepy crawly things, right? So when we talk about the locusts, I put things on the table like this for the kids to play with. You know, jumping bugs and stuff like that. Here's finger puppets. Here's bread. Here's matzah. Here's salt water and parsley. So everything, and here's the plague with the cattle disease. So I usually decorate the tables with all kinds of, crazy fun stuff. When we get to the wild beasts, one of the plagues was wild beasts. One of the plagues was darkness. So any way in which you can act out the story is fine. That's really what you want to do. Okay. Sometimes I'll even put little Moseses and stuff on the table. So let's talk about the Seder plate for just a minute. Here you see a Seder plate that, thank you, Michael, has put together for me. And there are various symbols. There's a roasted egg, which symbolizes new life. There are greens, parsley, springtime, because Passover's in the spring, right? Rebirth. There is a lamb shank bone, because the story of Passover tells us that on the night before Pharaoh let the Israelites go, the Israelites slaughtered lambs or rams, and they took the blood and they put it on the lintel, which is the doorpost of the house, so that when the angel of death came and slew the Egyptians, the Israelites were spared. So we represent that with the lamb shank. This red stuff is horseradish, spicy, the harsh labor that the Israelites had to endure. And this, which you're going to get a taste of at the end of the in-service, is called charosis. It is a traditional combination of apples, honey, cinnamon, wine, and nuts. And it's used to represent the mortar of the bricks when the Israelites were building the pyramids in Egypt. So everything is designed to be reminiscent of and some sort of symbol of the story. From what you eat to the order you do it in to the prayers that you say and so on. How long does a Seder last? Somebody asked me that question.
How long does a Seder last?
It's kind of like when somebody asks you, how long does it take you to get from Encinitas to La Jolla, right? What do you say?
Depends on the traffic.
Depends on traffic. Depends on who's leading the Seder. So in Katzen and in GHC, our Seders will probably be 15, 20 minutes. They'll be significantly longer than that in independent living and assisted living. Most of the Seder is done before the meal, then the meal is served, and then there's a little bit afterwards. After the Seder, you're not supposed to turn to any other kind of entertainment. In other words, you don't go home and flip on the TV or go out to a movie. The Seder is supposed to be self-contained. There is music. There's lots of singing during the Seder, too. There are very specific fun songs that are sung. We sing one song about Pharaoh and all the frogs jumping all over the place, and that was one of the plagues. We also have salt water, and we dip the parsley into the salt water. Any idea what the salt water might represent? Tears. The tears of the slaves, exactly. So everything that we have is all reminiscent of the story. Is this salt? Is it kosher salt? I'm kidding. Okay, next page. The page that says, what is kosher for Passover and how does it affect us here at Seacrest Village Retirement Communities? The kosher dietary laws, Kashrut, during Passover become more stringent than the regular dietary laws for the rest of the year, the laws that you're used to, right? So, in addition to the separation of dairy and meat and prohibiting shellfish and pork, certain types of grains are not permitted. That includes wheat, barley, rye, oats, and spelt. Now don't ask me what spelt is. You gotta get your spelt checker out. Very bad. Okay?
Spelt checker.
Anything that can be misidentified as wheat is not permitted. So you could see how you might take barley or rye and think that it's wheat, and it might really be wheat. So wheat's prohibited, as well as things like corn, rice, legumes, and some nuts such as peanuts, and also rice. Did I say rice? Yes. So, in Sephardic communities, which are the communities of Jews who come from Spain, Portugal, Mexico, Morocco, Algeria, Iran, Syria, they will eat rice, beans, corn, because that's part of the staple of foods, right? That's what grows there. So those foods are commonly eaten among the Sephardic Jews. Most of the Jews we have living here are Ashkenazi. They come from Europe. They come from Poland, Russia, Germany, right? That is not their custom. So if they were to see corn on their plate, it would be very weird for them. I'm hoping to soon have that. Maybe not my first year here, maybe not my second year here, but hopefully to introduce that. Because there's really no reason not to have it. You know, a housewife in the Middle Ages who went down to her grain cellar in the dark of night and couldn't tell the rice flour from the wheat flour, that's a problem. I can go to my pantry in my 21st century condo, open the pantry door, and I can see that it says rice or wheat. I know what I'm taking. So I'm not gonna make the mistake. But that's for down the road. All right. Anything that contains leavening, which is the ingredient that causes baked goods to rise, such as baking powder and yeast, is prohibited. So we're not gonna have breads here that are made out of a yeast dough. Like challah, there's no challah during Passover. Matzah in many varieties is used as a bread substitute, and in addition, the culinary department bakes special muffins, cookies, and cakes during the Passover holiday. We even have Kosher for Passover cereal. It's not great.
It's not bad.
Terrible. I mean, it's not bad. But anyway, okay. The dishes that we will serve to serve our residents will be kosher for Passover. So we actually change our dishes here. We have other dishes for the rest of the year. During Passover, we change to special sets of dishes that have never had any of this bread stuffs on them, okay? The entire kitchen is going to undergo a special process of cleaning to make sure that all the equipment in the kitchen and the cooking utensils are kosher as well. So we can't run out and buy new ovens, refrigerators, bakery shelves, and so on. Everything is koshered. And it's exactly what Michael and his team did in January when we opened the trailers. Before they cooked so much as one thing in there, they went through a really extreme process of cleaning everything out. Anybody in here involved in that cleaning process? Yes, right. Hot water, everything going through the dishwasher several times on boiling hot water. Racks in the ovens turned on, the burners turned on to burn off any food stuff that might be there. Because the equipment in the kitchen we rented, we didn't buy it, and you know we don't know if it was at a barbecue at a rib fest somewhere, right? So we had to clean it up. Even though it came to us clean, we had to kosher it. All right. So let me tell you how extreme people get at this time of year. Before Passover, there are very traditional Jews who will kosher their homes. They have separate sets of dishes for Passover. They will literally be on floors with a toothbrush, making sure they get up every crumb. Now what happens if you're sitting on your sofa watching TV one night and you reach your hand back and there's an old Cheeto, you know, stuck in the... Well, you know what? We say a prayer before Passover starts that essentially says, you know, God, I'm only a human being. I'm imperfect. I've tried my hardest to make sure I found everything. And if I can't find everything, you'll forgive me. Okay? So we're going to do a symbolic collection of bread and other things that Michael may have in the kitchen. And we're going to symbolically burn some of it to show that we are getting rid of it. Okay? So at home, what I'll do is I'll clear everything out of my pantry, wipe down the shelves, everything comes out of my refrigerator, I clean my refrigerator. Anything that is still boxed, I'll put away in my garage, or I'll put it, you know, somewhere else out of the kitchen, or eat it, get rid of it before the holiday. My great-grandmother and great-grandfather were Russian immigrants who came to the United States in the 1880s, 90s from Russia. My grandfather was a kosher butcher in Brooklyn on Flatbush Avenue, which was like the Jewish part of Brooklyn years ago. My great-grandmother had false teeth. She was so particular about Passover that she had 2 sets of false teeth. One for the regular year and one for Passover. Believe it or not. So that she knew that the ones she put in during Passover had never had any hummus, any bread or flour or anything like that. Okay? We're not going to do that. All right. So, as an employee, here are a few things you need to be aware of. Our housekeeping and culinary departments put in extreme effort to prepare Seacrest Village for this holiday, so please take personal responsibility and be respectful of their efforts. Mel's Diner is closed for the entire holiday, so if you're used to going in there and buying food, plan accordingly, because you're not going to be able to purchase food in there. The tables that are right outside of Mel's Diners that are usually reserved for kosher meals, those are now going to be kosher for Passover only tables. So there will be people like myself bringing kosher for Passover food during the holiday, and if I want to sit outside and eat, that's where I'll eat my meal. And again, those tables are going to be wiped down, cleaned for the holiday, okay? The table, you may use the AVS patio as well as any other designated spaces for dining. Okay, so if you usually eat out on AVS, now there are a couple little restrictions which we'll get to. All of our resident dining rooms will be strictly kosher for Passover. Please do not bring any food, drinks, snacks, or any other items into those rooms from outside of the building. Okay? Once you do, think of it like cross-contamination. I don't see any nursing. Yes, some nursing. If you walk into a resident's room and they have MRSA or C. diff, they've got an infection, and you put on a gown and gloves and a mask, and you walk out of that room with all that stuff on, guess what? You just contaminated the whole building. You take it off and you throw it away, right, before you leave. Similarly, you walk into a kosher dining room with a sandwich, you have now made that room not kosher. So please be very, 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 very careful with your foods, okay? The Human Resources Department is going to be providing meals for all shifts on the dates that you have here. There are 5 days. These meals are to be eaten in the employee lounge, or if you take it out of the lounge, they're going to have available to you paper plates and foil. So if you go in there and it's pepperoni pizza day, please do not walk through the building with a slice of pepperoni pizza, okay? You're going to put it on a paper plate, you're going to wrap foil around it, and then you're going to take it to a designated place to eat it. Got it?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The residents will be happy, the visitors will be happy, and your rabbi will be really happy. Okay. Please do not use your own drinking containers during this time. How many of you bring in like a coffee thing or a bottle? Okay. During Passover, we're going to have bottled water for you. We're going to have paper cups for you. If you go out to lunch at McDonald's or wherever, that McDonald's drink into the building. It's not kosher. If you wanna bring in a sealed bottle of iced tea or a can of Sierra Mist or something like that, don't open it until you get to an area where you can drink it. Does that make sense? If you're chugging on it all through the hallways and everywhere, most sodas are not kosher for Passover because they have corn syrup in them. Okay? So,
What if you're in your office?
yes, as long as you open it in your office. Okay? Just don't be kind of walking through the building. Now, there are a couple places that aren't official dining rooms that are also kosher. For example, in the assisted living building, they have a little bistro on each floor that has cookies and coffee and water. Those will be kosher for Passover. Everything that's in there, Michael will bring in kosher for Passover. So don't sit in those rooms and eat. Similarly, the pantry in Goldberg is gonna be kosher for Passover. Everything that's in the refrigerator in Goldberg is gonna be taken out. That fridge is gonna be cleaned, and Michael's team will be replacing all that product with kosher for Passover product. So if you have a half a leftover sandwich, please don't put it in the fridge. In fact, those refrigerators are not supposed to be used for anything other than nursing supplements. They're not supposed to be used for resident food either. So, and that's something we're gonna have to work on with our resident families. Because, I went in there the other day and there was stuff in there that was clearly not nursing. So, does everybody kind of get all that? I know it's a lot to know, but just eat in designated places. Who works in Katzen? Okay, in Katzen, the private dining room, strictly kosher. Okay, no eating in there. All right. So, last page. What time is it? Am I doing okay here on time? I don't want to keep anybody too long. Oh, good. Ideas for working with our residents over the Passover holiday. Our residents represent a broad range of religiosity and practice. Some were raised and still consider themselves to be Orthodox. Others are religious at a certain time of the year, and still others would consider themselves to be secular. Many of our residents are not Jewish, and so for them, this holiday may seem strange and unfamiliar. Okay? We have a significant number of non-Jewish residents on our campus. Many of them in the Goldberg Healthcare Center, because they come in for rehab, post-surgery, and so on and so forth. So some of our Goldberg residents are more of a temporary population. They're not necessarily long-term care. So expect some confusion, especially with people who've not been here before for Passover. Maybe some complaints from residents, I don't like the food, it tastes different, I'm not Jewish, why do I have to keep kosher for Passover? I will tell you that they are gonna see very, very little difference in the menus. They may have matzanya instead of lasagna. We'll make it with matzah instead of broad noodles, okay? Right, Michael? Okay.
Correct.
Oh, I hope I'm correct. Because
Yes.
he's sitting there going, oh my God,
That's
I gotta
right.
get that one on the menu. Okay. Major holidays are an opportunity, I think, to get to know our residents in a much different way from the normal day-to-day interactions. And this goes for our Jewish residents and our non-Jewish residents. So ask them questions. Ask them how they celebrated the festival as a child or in their homes when their families gathered. Encourage them to talk or ask them simple open-ended questions to engage them in an open-ended question is, right? Not a yes-no question. Did you celebrate Passover in your home? Yes. Okay, then the conversation's over. How did you celebrate Passover in your home? Opens up a dialogue. And even residents who are, who have severe dementia, the memories from some of these childhood religious experiences are so firmly imprinted that it's amazing. When I do services on a Saturday morning, and I have many Goldberg residents in there, and Katzen residents, some of whom don't remember who their children are, they're singing all the Hebrew songs. It's pretty amazing. Amazing, amazing. So, it's Easter weekend too. Ask your non-Jewish residents, what are you doing for Easter? How do you celebrate with your family? Did you do an egg hunt when you were a kid? What did you do with your own children? It's an opportunity to really get to know people. Be prepared from residents as well as the possibility of emotional reactions. Our residents could feel sad about not being with family and friends, either because they are no longer living, or because they do not live nearby, or because the resident is too frail to leave the facility. We do have a lot of residents who go to their families' homes, or they'll go out to a synagogue for one of the Seders at a synagogue. But not everybody is able to do that. We also have residents who are Holocaust survivors, whose memories may be very different. Were they fleeing from their homes during Passover? Were they in a concentration camp? Did they lose family members who were an integral part of their Passover celebrations? So be sensitive and be aware. Passover marks the time at which my dad, who was captured by the Nazis in France in November of 1944 and sent to a Nazi prisoner of war camp in Germany, Passover is when he was released from captivity. So every year, that became a major theme of our Passover Seders. It was his personal redemption from slavery. He walked out of the camp with a friend because the Nazis had fled. So we have residents here who have these stories, if not about themselves, then certainly about their family members. Okay, so, and you may want to engage them in conversation. Finally, use me as a resource. So please don't assume or don't take a stab at it. Call me or email me or send a carrier pigeon with a message, however you want to get in touch with me. There's no such thing as a silly question. Some of you have been here for years and have been through this spiel before. Others of you are brand new and you really don't know how it goes and what it looks like until you get through it. So please come to me. My office, I'm always available if you have questions. I have other resources I can give you if you want them. Questions? Don't be shy. Nothing? Yes?
Mine's more administrative. Is the Stein Center going to be kosher at this time?
What do they serve in there?
We don't serve.
Do you have a kitchen in there?
Yeah.
As long as you're bringing the food and keeping it in the fridge there and eating it in there, yes. Okay?
Yes, it's not kosher. Is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
it won't be kosher for
Okay.
Passover because it's not a resident or a patient venue. It's more of an administrative venue, okay? Residents can continue to eat whatever they want in their rooms if they have their own apartments. It's their room, they can make themselves a BLT if they want to, okay? That's their right. But they can't bring it into a designated area. Those of you who work in dietary, be careful. I mean, I've been in the dining room sometimes and I see people's individual drinking containers. They're not kosher. If you had that in your car and then at home and then brought it back to work, it shouldn't be in the dining room because it's not kosher. You got that, right? Okay. Perfecto. Oh.
Well, I'm only a visitor, right?
Yes, but I have a shill here.
Yes, but I do have to tell you, and you have not been here for Passover.
No, I have not.
That Michael's staff bakes the best Passover rolls you can imagine.
I heard that.
Oh, there you are.
I heard that, and I may have to put in my own order. Okay, so the very last thing we're gonna do is, do you mind passing? So I'm gonna take one, and then we're gonna give you a little Herz to sample. How many of you eat apples? How many of you like cinnamon? Honey? Wine? That's what's in here. And nuts. And nuts, yeah, but it's walnuts. So, I like mine with a lot of wine.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
What do you think? It's red wine, usually Manischewitz. Good? of this, you can get a little tips. Yes.
So just by covering, pardon me, the pizza with a tin foil, that keeps it from like contaminating the rest of the area?
Well, there's two issues. The bigger issue is the sight of the food. Okay. There's a concept in Judaism known as yirat ayin, which means how does it look to the eye? And if you have somebody who comes into the building, who's visiting a resident who keeps kosher, and they see someone walking through the building with a slice of pepperoni pizza, and we are going to have pepperoni pizza, it doesn't look right.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same reason we don't take our buses out to do field trips on Saturday, because it's Shabbat. You're not supposed to drive on Shabbat. So even though I drive to get here, we don't want our buses with our big emblem. So during the holiday, Life Enrichment will not have any outings to restaurants on the bus. Okay, they may go other places. But one more thing, that you have the dates on here of when the holiday is. It starts at sundown on Friday the 19th, ends at sundown on Saturday the 27th. The first 2 days of the holiday and the last 2 days are like a Sabbath. We're very lucky because it falls on a Sabbath this year. So there's no activities anyway, big activities, okay? And we call those quiet days, which means beauty shops are closed, we're not having vendors in the building, we don't have administrative meetings, gift shops are closed, Mel's is closed, and so on, okay? So it's like a Sabbath. I will be doing services on the first morning of the holiday, which is the 20th, and on the last morning of the holiday, which is the 27th. Those are going to be in the Guardian Room, just like, they're both Saturdays, coincidentally. Doesn't always happen that way. And then, so that's 2 days, that's 4 days, right? The 4 days in the middle, days 3, 4, 5, and 6, anything goes. Not with regard to food, but anything else. Activities resume as normal, business meetings. Now, we are, in some areas, a 24/7 healthcare facility, right? That doesn't stop. Nothing stops when it has to do with the physical, medical well-being of a resident. Anything goes. So, and that includes if they have some sort of medical restriction with regard to diet. And there's going to be a letter that's going to all the families that will talk about that to contact me, and I'll work with Michael if God forbid somebody has, an issue. If you are going to eat matzah during Passover, it's called the bread of affliction. The reason we eat matzah is because the Israelites were told in the middle of the night to get out of Egypt, because the last plague was the plague of the death of the firstborn, and there was massive death throughout Egypt. And so they didn't have time to bake their bread and let it rise. They just baked it in the sun. It was flat, and that's why we eat matzah. But I'll tell you a little secret about matzah. For every slice of matzah you eat, you should eat 1 cup of stewed prunes.
We got both.
Or mixed fruit. So there's a formula. Matzah, fruit. Otherwise, you will find out very quickly why it's called the bread of affliction. You get my drift, okay? That's it. Thank you all for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Can I say something real quick
Yes,
before?
and don't forget, if you have questions, please let me know.
So the 5 years I've been here, we never had this type of presentation and educational regarding Passover. But it's very important because I know there'll be a handful of employees that are not going to make any of these in-services, so it's up to us to relate, the messages, especially now about bringing their own.
And it has been taped. It's going to go up on Paycom. Anybody who is not able to see it live and in the flesh can pull it up on Paycom, but really needs to watch it before the holiday. Okay? So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.